We live in a world of objects. We surround ourselves with things: chairs, mirrors, lamps, assuming they are inert, dead matter. But have you ever noticed something in your house move? Just a fraction of an inch? This is the thing in the guest room. Elias was a collector. He loved mid-century modern furniture, the kind with soul. Last year, he found a vintage gentleman's valet at an estate sale. It was a beautiful piece of dark mahogany, designed to hold a suit jacket and trousers. It was perfect for the unused corner of his guest room. Everything was fine for about a week, but then one night, as the house was making its regular settling noises, Elias heard a different sound he couldn't explain. It wasn't the regular creaking sounds that he was used to. It was a wet sound. It sounded like a sponge being squeezed, and the water was splattering all over the wood floor. About a week later, Elias noticed something strange. He went into the guest room to hang a coat in the valet. As he reached for the door, he noticed that it felt warm. It wasn't near the heating vent, and that side of the house doesn't get a lot of sun, so it couldn't be either of those things. As he was contemplating the cause, his hand brushed against the mahogany. His skin crawled. It didn't feel like polished wood. It felt like callous, like a heel of a foot that had been dried out for years. He tried to laugh it off. He told himself it was probably because the piece was old. It probably just needed a good buff with some wax. But then he noticed the smell. Not the scent of old wood or lemon polish. It was a faint, metallic odor. The smell of a butcher shop just after it's been hosed down. That night, Elias left the guest room door cracked open. He lay in bed, staring at the sliver of light from the hallway, and then he saw it. There was movement from the guest room. He heard that wet sound again. It stopped for a few minutes, but just as Elias started to doze off, the noise started again. He opened his eyes and saw the shadow again. As his eyes adjusted, he realized it was the valet. It moved. It undulated. In the shadows, the dark wood seemed to ripple like a muscle. It moved from the corner of the room to the foot of the guest bed. It was silent, save for that wet, rhythmic pulse. You would think that Elias would want that valet out of his house as soon as possible, but he didn't get rid of it. He felt some strange pull to it. He couldn't. He found himself mesmerized by its nightly movements. One day, he went into the guest room to put away a blazer he had worn that day when the landline rang. He hung the blazer from the valet's wooden hand and left the room. When he returned to the room a few minutes later, the blazer was gone. There were no scraps, no buttons on the floor, just a thin, clear film of moisture on the wood where the blazer had hung just minutes before. One crisp fall morning, Elias was in the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal. He opened a cabinet and out popped a mouse. It jumped onto the counter, then to the floor, and headed right down the hallway toward the open guest room door. He ran down the hall hoping to get to the door before the mouse, but he was too late. He got there just as the mouse ran right under the valet, just in time to hear that wet sound. Later that day, when Elias entered the room, he noticed that the valet was different. It was larger. The mahogany was darker, almost purple. And on the side of the wood, there was a small tuft of gray hair, slowly being pulled into the grain of the wood. The valet wasn't just a piece of furniture. It seemed to be a mimic, and it was hungry. This is where it gets really chilling. A few nights ago, Elias's brother was coming to visit, and he was staying in the guest room. Elias tried to warn him. He tried to get him to stay at a hotel. But how do you tell someone your furniture is alive? In the middle of the night, Elias woke with a start when he heard his brother's voice. "Elias, can you come in here? I think I dropped my phone under the bed." Elias stood at the guest room door. He reached for the handle, but then he stopped when reality slammed into him. His brother was still at the airport. His flight had been delayed. He wasn't even in the house. Elias looked through the keyhole. The room was dark, but standing in the center of the room wasn't the valet. It was a shape. A tall, mahogany-colored figure that looked almost like a man. It had the right height. It had a head, but it had no face. Just the polished grain pattern of wood. And then the figure spoke again in his brother's voice. Perfectly pitched, perfectly human. "Elias, open the door. I'm hungry." Elias is staying in a hotel now. He left the house with nothing but his car keys. He says he can still hear that wet squeezing sound in his dreams. Check your furniture, friends. Look at the grain of the wood. If it feels warm, if it smells like copper, don't turn your back on it.